Part 4, the multi-role fighter. This is by far probably the least popular type of fighter, but has the most fans. If you talk to F-15, F-16, I'm sorry, not F-15, F-16, F-18, they definitely have probably the most fans combined. Part of that is because they're multi-role fighters that were actually originally not designed to be multi-role fighters technically, and they're really pretty planes. So, the multi-role fighter. What is the point of a multi-role fighter? Well, exactly what it sounds like. Basically, to be multi-mission configurable, from denying airspace to close air support to intelligence gathering to SEAD, which is basically enemy air defense suppression. It's just supposed to be a flexible aircraft that can have a decent payload, that's always on standby. It's just usually not going to be as expensive to operate as an air superiority fighter, but it's essentially a backbone aircraft. So when the way has been cleared and you've got a bunch of these multi-role fighters, is the enemy threat aircraft or ships or tanks or buildings, helicopters, whatever it is, the multi-role, you should be able to basically strap them on different types of munitions, whether, for intelligence or whatever you need to do, pictures, and it should be able to go do it. It's a workhorse fighter. The doctrine is basically, it's a Swiss Army knife. You configure it for what you need it to do, and you as a commander now can put an aircraft in the air that can at least do an okay job at whatever you're trying to get it to do. Examples of multi-role fighters. The F-16C Fighting Falcon, as I talked about before, basically they just strapped a bunch of crap on the F-16 and now it can technically do everything. I'm not a huge fan of the F-16C in the multi-role configuration because I think they took a really good, really fast, really maneuverable aircraft and just weighed it down with close air support stuff when they probably should have just had another plane do that. But, F-16 is not a light fighter anymore. It's a hell of a lot heavier in terms of the payload it carries than what it was initially intended. But it works. Viper drivers, as they call themselves, they love the plane. It sells internationally extremely well. In fact, I think it's the best-selling... it's certainly the best-selling American aircraft. It might be the best-selling aircraft in the world. The Pakistanis have it. Everybody's got it. The F-16, again, it's inexpensive, but it's very modern. Really good. One of the better, basically similar problem with multi-role, the F-4 Phantom, that was pushed into multi-role capabilities. As I had said before in the Interceptor video, it's designed as an interceptor. I don't like that it was pushed into multi-role, but it was. Oh, I guess it's a fighter bomber now. Oh, now it does this. It's cool that it's configurable, but I think it was pressed to do things that it really the airframe wasn't optimized to do. Now, good examples of multi-role fighters. One is the F-18C. Why is that a good example? Well, because the F-18 is based off of basically the competitor to the F-16, which was a small guy called the Cobra. It lost to the F-16. But the Navy really liked the F-18. They especially liked that it had two engines, because the Navy likes that generally more. Now they've thrown that out with the F-35, but whatever. It's still a plus to have two engines. And basically, McDonnell Douglas made the F-17 bigger to have it, be able to carry this extra payload, as opposed to with the F-16, where they just strapped it onto this already kind of small fighter. It's basically a really good short takeoff Navy aircraft with a tail hook. It's got the folding wings, relatively low maintenance, all things considered, and it can kind of do anything. Basically, you got a carrier. It would have mostly Hornets, and they were always a threat. They weren't a bad dogfighter if you configured them right. They weren't bad at close air support because they could carry a lot of different things. They weren't bad as an attack aircraft. That's why they called it the FA-18 for a while. I think it's still called the FA-18 Fighter Attacker. But it's a multi-role aircraft. Basically, it's a jack of all trades. It's not the master of anything in particular, but it can be configured to do kind of almost any mission that it needs to do. It's very efficient. So the F-18, very good multi-role fighter. The F-18C. Now, what has replaced that? The F-35. Now, if you're expecting me to crap on the F-35, I will not. What I will crap on is the procurement process. That was a joke. I think I said this before. It took twice as long to deliver, and it was 10 times more expensive than it needed to be. That said, the final product of essentially a multi-role F-35 is very good. It's very, very good. It's got the most advanced sensor platforms. It's got built-in seed. It's got better eyes on the battlefield than even the Raptor has. It's really good. You can configure it to go destroy whatever you need it to destroy. Its payload isn't huge, all things considered, but it is, in terms of its multi-mission capabilities, excellent. But it is a jack of all trades and master of none. It doesn't do one thing better than basically the Raptor does, or a dedicated strike fighter does, or an attacker does. And that's, I think, where basically the suits are getting themselves in trouble. They've got the F-35A, which is the biggest of the F-35s. It's basically a little longer. It doesn't have any of the tail hooks. It doesn't have any of the extra equipment that you need for landing on an aircraft carrier. It doesn't have the internal fan for vertical liftoff. It's basically pinnacle F-35, and it's got, a regular cannon in it. It doesn't have an air-to-ground cannon. It's just an Air Force aircraft designed to replace the F-16 in the multi-role role. It's very good. It's expensive. It will get cheaper as we build more of them, as especially other countries are building them. But it's very stealthy, and it's very capable. So F-35A, very good. Let's move on to the B. The B, they're pushing it as a replacement for the Harrier because it's vertical takeoff and landing. It is not a good replacement for the Harrier because it's not... it can't do what the Harrier can do. It doesn't have the linger time the Harrier has. It doesn't have the subsonic performance that the Harrier has. It just has vertical takeoff and landing. Now, why is it still a good multi-role? Well, it's a good multi-role because if you need it to provide close air support, yeah, it can do it. If you need to shoot down enemy aircraft, yeah, it can do it. If you need it to act in a seed role, yeah, it can do it. And, helicopter carriers, which, basically, vertical VTOL carriers, the Harrier couldn't do a lot of those things, right? What the Harrier does, I think, does a little better than the F-35. Now, I do like that they put basically a version of the Harrier's cannon in the F-35B. That was a smart move. Because if you're going to have it do any kind of close air support from the Marines, like downgrading the cannon would I think it's 25 millimeter. In the other two configurations, it's a 20 millimeter. In the B, it's a 25 mil. That's important. That's important to the Marines, at least. It's good in that sense. Doesn't replace the Harrier, in my opinion, but it is a good capable aircraft. Last one, the F-35C. The F-35C is basically, it's a multi-role, except it's not really a multi-role. Well, it's also going to be an attack aircraft because they retired the A6. Okay, so they're trying to bill it as the attack variant. It's not really the attack variant. It's the attack variant in the same way the F-18C is an attack aircraft. It's a multi-role aircraft. It's got less payload than the A, because of the fact that, it has to carry all the carrier stuff, and it's got shorter takeoff and landing. I think it's actually the fuselage is actually a little bit shorter. It's short takeoff and landing, STOL, whatever. It's good. It's good. I think it's a decent replacement for the F-18C. I don't think it replaces what the A6 did for the carriers. Certainly doesn't do what the A-10 did. They were saying, oh well, who needs the A-10 when you've got the F-35 because it's got all these. No, the F-35 is the pinnacle of multi-role aircraft, but that is what it is. It is a multi-role aircraft. It's not a strike fighter. It's not an attacker. It's not an air superiority fighter. It sure as hell isn't an interceptor, and it is definitely not a light fighter. But it's a good multi-role plane. So that's what a multi-role aircraft is. What do I think moving forward? Embrace the F-35. F-35 is a multi-role cross-service aircraft, being something that basically our allies, basically a stealth aircraft that our allies will be able to have. It's fine. It's fine. The Israelis have been using it basically in Syria, and it's performed amazingly. They've apparently been buzzing Tehran and harassing them. The sensors on the F-35 are unbelievable. When we did that cruise missile strike a couple years ago, Trump had authorized it because of the chemical weapons, which now is kind of questionable. The advanced Russian surface-to-air missile systems didn't pick up what was going on. We didn't mention we sent F-35s, but basically the way had been cleared for the Rafales launching from the French aircraft carrier that did a lot of the air-to-air damage. So the F-35, it does some work. It's really good. It has a lot of really good things going for it, and to throw out that research and those capabilities just because we're pissed off about how the program was run would be silly. People at Lockheed, they're sneaky. The suits are sneaky, but the actual engineers, they made a damn good plane. So I say embrace the F-35. It's a multi-role aircraft. Good. Check that one off the list.